Started working with Leander, Texas in 1992, and been working with them ever since. During that time, they've grown from about 3,000 students to almost 35,000 students. It's the latest number I've heard. More? 38,000.
38.
Oh my gosh. And never looked back. By the second year, they just said, we're going to have a constancy of purpose, and we're not going to deviate from that. So one of the amazing things about Leander is that the longitudinal look of what happens in a school district that maintains that kind of constancy of purpose for 25 years. What happens then? Well, today they're one of the top performing school districts in the state, but probably the most fascinating thing about Leander is they're called Happyville. Teachers are just happier. Kids are happier. Parents are happier. In fact, one of the theories is they're growing so fast because parents are moving there specifically to put their kids in that school district. And it's causing growth just based on that one factor. So we have two exciting people here today to talk about how they're implementing this kind of strategy in both at the principal level and the classroom teacher level. Christine Simpson, Sarah Ambrus. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lots of information this morning. I remember when I started as an assistant principal, one of the things that we do in this constancy of purpose path in our district is that when we have new leadership come in at any level, whether it's an assistant principal, a campus principal, district level, they go to Langford training for 4 days. So I remember as a new assistant principal at Leander High School, feeling like I had 1,000 things to do, and David came in with all of these tools, and my jaw dropped, and I was trying to absorb and process it all, and I thought, I am way too dumb to do this job. I don't understand half of what you just told me. But we are a cautionary tale because we took the tools and we went back and used them, and as you will find, they work. They work. So in sifting through all this information, we're going to give you some processing time during our session because they work. And I know we've all gone to conferences and they tell us, this is the thing that's going to change your life. They lied. This works. Okay? Just believe me on that. We're going to talk about an example that grew exponentially by involving students in this process today. So thank you for your time. We are from Texas. We are from a high-performing district in Texas, but my campus is on the naughty list most of the time. So the state testing reports come out. You know the finger-wagging report? Shame on you. That one? And I tell my teachers all the time, don't look at that. At Leander Middle School, we are about the learning process. That's it. When they come to me and ask me to pay for or order materials that will prepare the students for the test, I say no. When they come to me and they ask me to shut down half of my campus so that the kids who developed a world in conflict living museum from start to finish and put it on for the public, and they needed to break fire code and use all my rooms so they could paper things and put sheets everywhere to make it feel real and bring other students all through this museum, I said yes. So we're about the learning. So if you look up Leander Middle School, we do have a diverse student population. We're about 50% economically disadvantaged. And we are highly successful at moving our students along. The progress is there. I sent a group of teachers to David recently, and I was just yelling at him because they came back and said, he said we don't have to grade anymore, and we don't have to do any kind of this lesson design reflective conversation because that's kind of like a lesson plan, and we don't think we have to do lesson plans anymore. So thank you, David, and be prepared for that, folks. Okay, so how did this work? So through this training, continual improvement, and what we learned about Deming, Sarah and I met up. Unfortunately, poor Sarah. I was an assistant principal, and we had, I'm sorry, you want to back up and talk about macro to micro?
Tell me the story.
I do this a lot. You're going to have to find that I just talk away, and then she has to stop and back me up. So had a group of students that were concerned on a greater level. We had bullying on our campus. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. But we had some bullying issues at Leander High School. And it was during a time when you didn't say the B word, that B word, because that could implicate that your school was not safe. So from an administrative standpoint, we kind of danced around that word a little bit. We don't want to own that word. We want to quietly solve that word. And so I pulled together, we have 36 clubs and organizations at Leander High School at the time, pulled together a student representative from each club or organization, from anime to the football team, okay, into one room. And I said, okay, I'm hearing we're having bullying problems. Is that the biggest problem on our campus right now? They said, yes, that we're very cliquey and we don't get along and we feel like that's the biggest problem on our campus right now. And I said, okay, and so then I started on a tool with them called the 5 Whys. And I said, well, why is that? And how do we fix that? And in the book, we talk about, by the way, we can't afford to give you guys electronic copies for free. I'm sorry, we're poor educators, but there are some copies on David's website, so feel free. But in the book, I did a how-why combination. So how are we going to fix that? And then they all looked at me and they said, well, Miss Simpson, the administrators need to stop it. And I said, well, honeys, if that were the case, don't you think I would have done that by now? And they said, what do you mean? And I said, I need your help, because from my level, it's not stopping. So what do? And we started down this journey to find the root cause. And through that, they identified that the problem was how we interacted with each other, what our campus culture was, from the student lens. Not what I thought our culture was or needed to be, but what they thought our culture was and needed to be. So how do we impact that? And before kindness was a dance or a flash mob in New York City, they came up with the concept of treating each other with kindness and really pushing kindness as the way to be. And they had these yellow smiley face shirts, and there was a core group of them, and on the back of the shirt they said, all we want it to say is curious with a question mark. And they named their club the Coalition of Clubs, which they shortened to C squared because they wanted a mathematical joke. So then they got frustrated when everybody came up and said, what's your math club about? Well, you named it that, so you have to answer that question a lot. And they went out, and they talked about what their shirt was about. And they changed the culture of the campus. Started with 9 students. Only 9 showed up from the 38 clubs. 36, 37, 38. 9 showed up. So from the 9 students, in May of 2010, the club grew quickly within the first year to 300 students, or 2,000 students on that campus at the time. We had a forum where we had everybody come together and use improvement tools so they could take those back to their campuses. They invited 5 other campuses in. We were so excited. We have 70 students show up from 5 schools. At our last forum, we had 750 students from 22 schools. The students led the change. They decided, how are we going to approach this, and what are we going to do? So we were so excited about it, we wanted to share with you. These are some different ways to think about how we can use these tools that you're learning about this morning. It doesn't have to be one way.
Okay, so real quickly, we placed some handouts on your tables. If you want to grab those and look at those for a minute, we want to keep this session really interactive and keep you engaged throughout. When we were talking with David about what this presentation was going to look like, we talked about incorporating some quotes from Dr. Deming into the presentation. And in the past, we've also incorporated a lot of quotes from our students as well. So we thought about how can we put those side by side and show the similarities? And it's really interesting because a lot of what was coming out of the mouths of our teenagers is very similar to what we hear from Dr. Deming, which I think really speaks to the common sense nature of his work. And so we have opportunities for you to reflect on these quotes throughout our presentation. So if you want to look at the first one there on your handout. and take about 2 minutes to jot down some thoughts and speak with the people at your table about the quotes on the paper and what you've heard from our story. All right, if you want to finish up that last thought.
Share a couple.
Okay, thank you. So one thing that we've seen is that there's a lot of different approaches to process improvement. A lot of times what we see is, your principal comes to a Langford training or Deming conference and puts a parking lot in their office, and that's it, and it's good, and hey, we're doing quality now, right? So with the leadership team only. That's unfortunately a little more common than what we'd like to see. The next level would be the campus leaders starting to work with teachers and maybe involving students in some things, maybe doing a student survey, things like that. The next level would be actually in the classroom, tools being led by students with support and hopefully being implemented by students. And then the final level would be individual students choosing the tools, independently leading them, collaborating, working together, and implementing process improvement. And that's really the level that we're going to focus on and discuss today.
Oh, is riding shotgun, is that a Texas thing? Do you know what that means? Okay, just checking. All right, so jumping into that passenger seat first, right? So in our case, the reason we called it that is because we wanted the adult to be in the passenger seat. We want the students to do the driving with the tools.
Right. Okay, so the next thing we'd like you to do is work through a 5 whys process of your own. Just really quickly, who's familiar with the 5 whys process already? Most of the room, great. Okay, if you're not, find somebody at your table who is. But basically what it's used for is to find the root cause of a problem. I found oftentimes in education we focus on symptoms of problems rather than the problem itself and the root cause. And asking the question why 5 times can help bring us to that root cause problem. So think of a situation that you're in right now. Think of your problem of practice, if you will. And then with a partner, ask the question why 5 times to see if you can drill down to the root cause of the problem rather than what might be considered a symptom. So we'll give you a couple minutes to do that.
Okay. Anybody willing to go out on a limb and be a little transparent and share what problem they were going to focus on? Anybody? You have a problem? I don't know if I have a solution, but I'll listen to your problem.
Okay, we're having trouble defining our problem.
You're having trouble defining your problem. That is an interesting question. So where did the conversation start?
Phones in class.
Phones
Really
in
a
class.
sentence of a problem. That's the nature. That's what we're talking about. Phones in class.
Phones in class. So why is that a problem?
That's where we had a healthy discussion about that. But
Okay,
we didn't get it. We didn't get very far.
you didn't. What was your difference in opinion?
Is it a problem with phones being in class, or is it problems with phones being used in class, or how do we even define what we think that the problem is? Sort of a definition of the statement. Yeah.
David has an interrelational diagraph for you. We do find sometimes that I have a hand up. Do we have a solution over here? Yes, please.
Well, not the solution, but we had the same problem, and what we came to was the real problem was how do you keep electronics from distracting kids? Because it's not always the problem we have.
Okay, so that's a fair place to end up. So do they distract kids would be another question you might want to go with.
Or does it affect student engagement?
Or does it affect student engagement one way or the other, to have or have not?
How much is it affecting the kids?
So you could look at the hows for that, because when I use the 5 hows, sometimes starting with that question of how does it affect or how is it an issue, you can try that as well. So digging into whether or not your problem is a problem. Sometimes we talk about common versus special cause as well. So my question when staff comes in, none of the kids are doing this, or all of the kids are doing this. My first question is one or none, right? Because what we want to know, is this issue really widespread, or is it a little more contained? So when deciding where to put our focus on our problem, we first need to look at where is that really happening and how is that really happening.
Right,
So,
and
thank
another
you for
way
that.
that you can help with that is, oftentimes when we go through the 5 whys process, we end up very frustrated because we come to factors that we have no control over, such as, oh, we need more time or we need more money. And so we want to stay away from that and focus on what we can control. So sometimes you have to go back and redefine your problem in terms of what you actually have control over.
lot of times in looking at the 5 whys, I've also noticed that sometimes we can identify symptoms that, are symptoms of a problem, but may not be the problem itself.
Sure.
By going through the 5 whys, you can kind of distill more accurately what is genuinely a problem. Because as an example, at our table, we looked at a particular group of students as disruptive. And so, why were they disruptive? And how, by going through the 5 whys, we were able to genuinely identify what would be the problem as opposed to, a symptom of the problem.
Sure.
And even reframing that question sometimes to kind of stretch our minds, why are they disruptive? And then also look at why do we consider them disruptive?
Right.
Because you can look at that through 2 different lenses as well. So it's really, I was just talking at lunch today about the thing that I love most about the way that Deming approaches change and improvement and the tools that Langford has taught us is it allows us to step out of the emotion and really dig into the problem. And so often the problems that we start with are at the heart of the emotion as well. So it does help tremendously in that regard to take it back and really look at how we're working through a problem and why we're working through the problem. And is the problem a problem?
Right. Okay, so again, we're going to ask you to reflect on the pair of quotes that are on your handout, and we'll give you about 2 minutes to discuss that at your table.
I gotta quit moving in front of the screen. Sorry, my little head. I'll play shadow puppets in a minute. As I stop and smile.
All right, if you would finish up that last thought. And we have some video to show you. Do you want to explain what's going on here?
So May of 2010 is when I started on the journey of working with students with tools. And so preparing for this conference, I'm a put my money where my mouth is kind of gal. So I don't want to stand up and talk to a group of people about how great something is if I don't know for certain that it continues to work. So I needed a more recent example. And so a couple of weeks ago, I went into a 7th and 8th grade leadership class, which is ironic because we tend to schedule students who perceptually, folks will say, well, they're wreaking havoc or they're causing trouble, so they need to go to leadership. Okay, so that's that elective wasteland sometimes that inadvertently occurs when you're working with a master schedule and a tight budget. So I had been talking this summer to the leadership teacher who is taking it on. Why don't we take this a different direction this year? Are you game for going to Langford and learning about this stuff that I preach about all the time and trying it out with some students to the degree that I wanted the students to have enough ownership to be able to choose their problem and choose the tools that they were going to apply to that problem. And I didn't want to go into my GT advanced coursework courses to work with students. And so she said, sure. Drive out fear, right? Sure, you're my principal, I have to do what you say. Sure. So I went in and co-taught some tools with our students here, and they presented, they're in this clip, they're presenting what tool they chose to use in their particular problem and why. And when I went in, you can see in the back there's some other tools that they had been using previously that were teacher taught, the affinity, there's an interrelational digraph, and then there's a couple of days of consensogram that I did with them. And so they are honest, and I love them for being honest. So the first day of the consensogram, are you committed to this process and working on this process? And we have all these 90s and 80s and 100s. And the second day I went in, which was about a week later, to pick up where we were, and it had dropped significantly. I said, guys, let's talk about this. What's going on? And there's this puffed up, tough girl in the front who wasn't going to say anything. She was sitting there. And I said, what's going on? She goes, Miss Simpson, you're the principal. So you come in the first day, of course we're going to feel like we have to say we're excited about what you're talking to us about. And I said, so what's the difference today? She says, well, you seem to want to work with us, so we're not afraid to say what we really feel. And right there, I praised her openly to the roof. Great job for identifying that. Anyone else agree with that? Super. So what is it? We kind of stand there and talk a lot. Okay, you know what? That bores me too. What else are we going to do? And we quickly restructured and went from there. So just encouraging that openness of conversation and driving out fear, even with the students with whom you work. Okay, clip.
We did the bone diagram, and we wanted to see the student choices and why students don't turn in their homework. Where are we now in the current situation? Students don't really do it because a lot of them don't care. They think it's boring. About 40% do their homework, 60% don't turn in their homework. For the arrow, we want to break the barriers. Some of those barriers being lazy, lack of knowledge, things like that. Where do we want to be in the future? We want to be at least maybe 90% turned in homework.
The funny thing about the data points they used is while they were putting together their information, the rival schools here standing next to each other, Texas A&M and the Longhorns, they were throwing out numbers, and I said, why are you saying 40%, 60%? Well, that's what we think it is. I said, but how do you know? Well, that's just what we think it is. And I said, well, how can you find out? Well, can we go ask some teachers real quick? I said, go. They ran down the hallway, and they surveyed quickly perceptual data they brought back, and they were right on the money, 40%. But at least we kind of got them out there to check their figures before they went on. So.
Okay, so real quickly at your tables, we'd like you to discuss, in terms of student ownership, what approaches you've already tried, keeping your problem of practice in mind, and if they've been effective, and why or why not.
Easy questions. Okay, good conversation. Sorry to cut you short. If you could wrap up, and we're going to ask one or two folks to share out again. All right, anybody have some collective wisdom they can share with the group? Yes?
In trying to address student problems, I implemented, or try to implement some love and logic. And Jim Fay talks about how you want to deliver things with empathy rather than with anger or sarcasm. And so when somebody comes up with an excuse and you just say, nice try, or you have your pithy saying that's your saying, he has a list of 6 that you can choose from, but you can make up your own. This is my helper over here. He gave me the saying, isn't that interesting? So I'm now using that one more often, but Jim Fay talks about using nice try, and then how once in a while when he really wants to screw it to the student, nice try. I used that same excuse when I was your age, but when I used it, it worked.
Good connection.
What he talks about is that if you deliver that with empathy, then it works. It has a positive effect. But if you deliver it with anger or sarcasm, it has a negative effect. Because it generates more conflict and causes more.
It's true, and then you're not working collaboratively. I think walking alongside of our students, again, when we talk about this, how we work with students, it's not that I know everything. It's that we're on this learning journey together. And it's very freeing for students to know that you still have some things to learn. So that's good. I like that. Empathy piece is big. Anybody else?
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness. Say a little more about that.
Just being in the moment, being more curious, and not immediately coming with a response to whatever you're hearing. Try to get a little bit of space between that and coming up with a solution right away.
It's hard, too, in education because we feel like we're in reactive mode all the time. We don't have enough time. We're in reactive mode all the time. So stepping back, and I like that word, mindfulness really captures it. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, so once again, we're going to ask you to reflect at your table on the pair of quotes. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. All right, if you would finish up that last thought. And we have another video clip to share with you from Leander Middle School, the same leadership class that Christine was discussing.
The barriers that are like preventing students from turning in their homework are being lazy, not taking time for homework, putting it off / not caring about it, and students not knowing the materials. And then things that can help, like things that drive students, are getting good grades, knowing you accomplished something, like not failing.
So when we go to a gradeless school, barrier solved? This group in particular, so again, starting point with students, and this is, again, a little bit of a cautionary tale. So brand new group of students, brand new use of tools. So you have to kind of guide initially, get them past this point. This is very surface level where they are right now in the process. We just started a couple weeks ago. So when I go back in, we're going to dig into their tools a little bit more. Because some of the answers they've hit in this, they're still very surface level because this is a brand new group of students using it. The students that are quoting had been using the tools for at least a year at that point. So you'll see the different levels of learning happening along the way. Sir, did you have something in the back?
Yeah, Renda here pointed out that the breakdown barriers between departments is the business principle from Deming. If you really wanted to apply that in schools, you'd have to give students a whole lot of freedom within their schools. And then a corollary to that is that it's the adults in the schools that are creating the barriers between the academic departments, not the kids.
You're absolutely right. And we found that when we were working with students. And one of the barriers I'm going to talk about is when the C-Squared Club grew exponentially and we went across campuses, each campus had an adult sponsor, a guide on the side, if you will. But getting the adults to let go of the control was a process improvement in and of itself. And you have well-meaning adults that are passionate about students leading change and changing the culture of their school and seeing this kindness be the reason behind why. So we have students who feel comfortable in part of their learning environment instead of it being done to them. And the barriers in working with the adults were far greater than what the kids were exhibiting. And we went K through 12 with this club, kindergarten through 12th grade. It's a K through 12 organization and it's student-led. And so we're going to talk about one of the barriers. The adults at the elementary level, the primary grades, you're going to let a 5-year-old tell me how to improve this campus? Yes. Yes. We're going to change up the tools a little bit so that they can kind of see and process and own those pieces. But yes, stakeholders, if students are your customer, age isn't a factor. The 5-year-olds are your customers as well.
Right.
So, consensogram. So we talked about how could we gather feedback from students of all ages. So this was one tool that we used through the club. I believe this was the 4th, 5th grade group. Does that sound about right? I'm not going to read it to you, but they used the dots to just select where they fell in that. This was interesting information because from their social lens, we were finding that bullying was going really underreported, and the kids were saying, I told somebody. Well, we didn't dig into who they were telling. And so when we put this tool in front of them, guess who their number one person was that they told? A friend. A friend. So this was for the younger grades, and we were trying to help them with an operational definition. So you take the actual term, and if you go into a kindergarten class and say, we're going to come up with an operational definition. Yes, we are. But if you put it again in this format, and you give them a sticker to show where they are, you can quickly gather a snapshot of what your students know and need to know. So that's kind of it was a capacity matrix, wasn't it? Go back, I wasn't looking all the way up. That was the capacity matrix. Yes?
So who came up with the definition of what bullying is? Was that the group of kids you were working with, or did the adults?
We were in the state moment where they were blasting out, this is the state definition of bullying. And so what we do with pretty much everything related is we put that adult document in front of the students and ask them to tear it apart and make it student-friendly language. And so oftentimes we'll have the older kids look at the more difficult definitions of things, and then they come up with a way to present to the younger kids, which happens all the time. Our high school groups go to elementaries, and they collaborate with elementary students and work together on either establishing a club or moving a club forward if they have a barrier that they're running into, anything related to the work that the students are doing.
The reason I asked that is because obviously bullying is an issue that's gotten a lot of attention.
Right.
Justifiably. And one of the things that I've noticed is, because I work with kids from K-12, is that with little kids now, somebody calls you a mean name once, they're bullying me, they're bullying me. And
Right.
I'm not saying it's okay for them to use respectful language with each other, but that's where I'm wondering, like, where you got your definition and how you know,
Right. And
help them have a working definition of it.
well, we will let them help us. We give it to the students to help us not be so in our own minds as adults, and then have them share peer-to-peer and share grade level to grade level. And the impact of that was far greater than us putting posters in the hall saying, "Don't bully people." Okay, just give me that money for that poster campaign for my school, and I'll help you out from there. So another was the perceptual data, because we do want feedback. Again, this is helping with that definition piece. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? And getting that out there allowed the students to own the problem and feel like they had some voice over the situation.
Okay, so now at your table, if you would, you've got some working space on your handout. Thinking of your problem of practice, identify some potential barriers that may exist to a student-led approach to your problem of practice.
Let go.
In the corporate environment, was the saying goes, we're going to let the inmates run the school. That's the way they usually call leadership. They were minions run the place. And in the school right now, things change. Trusting the students would do it. Their life experiences, and how do you extract that to you? So you have to capture the It's not just that, it's just that you need them to evaluate school policy, school practice, how they feel about the schools, representing justice.
Okay, I'm sorry I have to wrap you up. I hear some really rich conversation going on, so I hope you continue that. Can we get one very strong, I need the group to hear this, share out, maybe just one this time? Yes, sir. The staff that doesn't want to let go. You know, we found that we brought students in front of our staff. When they started to really gain momentum and have that voice and choice and how it made them feel and the impact that it had, they identified unsafe areas, put a big map of the school up, a big blow-up map of the school, and we had the students identify where they felt most safe and where they felt the least safe. And when we put that in front of the staff, and then we had the students talk about this is how the students framed it. We didn't come up with their words. We need you to help us make our school feel safe all the way around. You want to talk about staff buy-in, unless you have a metal heart, then you shouldn't be in education, just saying. Sorry, that was a personal aside. So that impact and getting the students again in front of the staff. Why are grassroots efforts so powerful? I mean, it would go back to that. But if you start with that top down, you know, when I hear Mr. Cahill talk about his grandfather and how much time he would spend with the workers in the workforce, the people that are on the ground doing the work, and we start to go to teachers, and you guys are amazing all day long. Take on impossible odds to move mountains with your little finger. But those that are on the ground and in the learning and in the moment are our students. Sorry. So how do we get that voice in? How do we get that choice in?
Okay. So one more pair of quotes. We'll ask you to reflect one more time. Give you about 2 minutes.
Bless you.
Yeah, that's not much on the way from home. Yeah, you sold it. Look at even the university, ethical conduct code, work whatever. Like, dishonest, yeah, by the way, I just know. I mean, it's just like the ethics code has every year, and the ethics statement review, you know, and I'm going, oh, someone sign this for me. It's not genuine.
All right, we're going to ask you to finish up that last thought. Come back. We've been talking about driving out fear quite a bit today. That's been kind of a common theme, and we have another video clip for you. We've been talking about the club a lot, but also how it's used in classrooms, and this is a clip of a student describing the hierarchy of help, which I originally learned at Langford training, and I'm going to show that to you now.
Okay, so what is this?
This is the hierarchy of help.
Okay, can you explain it?
Level 1 is what knowledge do you already have at your disposal? What do you know yourself?
Okay.
And if you don't know the answer yourself, or you just want to be sure, it's never hurts to go to level 2, which are your resources, your notes, homework, online tools, or anything of the sort. Anything that you can look up and have available to you.
Okay.
if you then can't find your answer there, you might need to go to your friends. And your friends will probably be doing something similar, so they'll probably have similar notes, and you can use their resources as well. And that's always a good thing. Just be aware some friends might think you owe them, and you might have to give them some tacos on that. And if you don't have the answer yet, then you should go to your teacher because they should have the answer by then.
Just to give you a little bit of perspective, that's my student. I work in high school special education as self-contained, what we like to call behavior students. I like to call them students who don't play the game of school. And this particular student came in with some pretty significant challenges and had things in his behavior intervention plan like will not throw furniture or curse out teachers, things like that. And I'm happy to say that about a month ago, we were able to completely dismiss him from special education services. Not that we cured him or anything like that, but he learned through tools like this to appropriately advocate for himself. And, you know, a lot of the fear that's associated with looking dumb in front of the class, asking a question, things like that, when you use the tools, like Christine was saying, it takes the emotion out of it. It takes it out of it for us, but it takes it out of it for kids as well. So.
And he added the myself, wasn't that a student?
Yes, as well. Yeah, we the students adapted your tool a little bit, David.
Sorry.
So they, you know, with that transparency and the freedom that we have in my classroom, it originally just had the resources, the peers, and finally the teacher. But you know, one of my students came to me and said, oftentimes I'm going straight to my resources, but I already know the answer. We need to add myself in there on the bottom. I need to think for myself. And I said, okay, well, let's add that on there. So, you know, having that freedom and being able to adapt the tools for use for the students is really powerful.
So we're going to try to stay on time, which is now, I believe, 2 o'clock. So we'll kind of go to our last slide on this. One thing on the feedback, we showed you some different forms of feedback and bringing in the adult fear again. When the club initially was at maybe 50 kids, they wanted to survey the campus to see where their impact was. And the results came back, and they were horrible. And I went to Sarah, and I went, we're miserable failures. And the kids came in and said, hey, did you see our results? They were great. Are we looking at the same thing? They said, well, did you see over here that here's where we're having some success, and here's where we need to do the work? Okay, we're great successes, yay! So again, being open to that lesson and learning. And so back to the adults, I mean, I encourage administrators too. We talk about the teachers that won't buy in and open up, but are you? Are you creating an environment for your staff to do that with your students? So that's the other piece. We can't forget that we're all stakeholders in this process. So we appreciate very much your attention today. I hope you have some takeaways on your page and maybe a couple of questions, or you want us to stop? No pressure. 2 questions.
2 questions.
Thank you. Anybody have any additional questions before we wrap? Yes?
One of Dr. Deming's quotes says, people care more for themselves when they contribute to the system. So I'm confused about the word for themselves.
Well, we found that through empowering students, giving them these choices and the voice, there are a lot of social issues that they came in with that they found their way out of. And they took care of themselves as learners. That's how we interpret the quote, because we did see phenomenal changes. Students who had been through horrendous circumstances, who were standing in front of a group of 300 younger students, teaching them how to be agents of change. And so you see that it had this unintended, wonderful impact on students who had never had the opportunity to grow and lead in that way. Mm-hmm.
In the back.
You seem to say in your introduction that you were able to blow off the central office with commands.
Well, they're sitting at this table. This is the table of my central office. Right there. You can talk to them later about how I'm in trouble all the time.
So I'd like to know how you won this independence, and your central office can answer to it if they want to.
What was the question? What was the question? He's in trouble.
Thank you so much for that question, and we got a wrap. He's waiting. Quite simply, it was seeing the change occur. We saw the evidence, and then we had greater support. Now, I did have a degree of support initially from my campus principal. He called me crazy a few times, but then he let it happen. I don't think anybody expected it to get so big so fast, and so they allowed this minute change to occur. Start somewhere. We say this at every presentation. With all the information you get in the next 2 days, pick something and start somewhere, because it's there and it has power. And I will talk to you more later if you want to get me in more trouble. All right.
Leander's a very special place. I know they do surveys every once in a while to say, what are we doing right? Often the number one thing that 3,000 teachers say is administrative support. And I guarantee you we can walk not very far from here and in school say that's the thing we do the poorest. So, you know, when people are trying to take on new challenges, make breakthroughs, they have extremely supportive central office people just trying to help them think through things, not just run off a cliff and do something, but okay, why do you want to do that? How do you think that's going to help people, and what's going to be the ramifications of that? And that's the power of what Deming was talking about with a supportive system. So.